Hello, my name is Owen, and welcome to a quick review of David Grann's The Wager, a tale of shipwreck, mutiny, and murder. This is a nonfiction book about a true story, true facts in this book, written by, and this is high praise, Barnes & Noble's Author of the Year for 2023. Now, 2023 was a mighty long time ago. We're all different people than we were in 2023. The sands of time have eroded us all greatly. You think you're better off, you're not better off, my friend. 2024, we're way past 2023. A whole, basically, almost 9 months at this point away. And I bought this book, or I received this book. It was a Christmas present. Christmas, 9 months ago. It's been sitting on my shelf for a mighty long time. I finally got down to it, finally read it, and I thought, is this Author of the Year material? It wasn't Book of the Year, though, so should I be judging on the quality of the book or just the quality of the writing itself? Perhaps that would lead me to a different conclusion at the end of this video. But The Wager, we're talking about The Wager, a tale of shipwreck, mutiny, and murder, perhaps. And I will say, let me just say, okay, because I feel like I don't get to share my opinion enough on this channel. I like a good nonfiction. You guys know I like to delve into the historical nonfiction, usually gearing more towards medieval, like Middle Ages type stuff. So it's a little bit off cuff for me in terms of period, but historical nonfictions, it's certainly up my alley. And having read a handful of them, I will say that this is very, very good. This is a very high quality nonfiction book. It reads well. It's not too long. It's hardcover though, so it was very expensive. Maybe you could wait for the paperback, to be honest. But not too long. It reads very, very well. One thing I've said before, and I'll say it again, the best nonfiction reads like fiction in that it's just a great story. And you don't just need a historian, you don't just need a good factual researcher, you need a storyteller to tell great nonfiction in an engaging and entertaining and informative way, right? Because if you're just too informative, then it's just a textbook. No one wants to read a textbook. But the story itself, this real life event that happened with the Wager, fairly interesting event, I would say. It was amplified by David Grann's writing. And to jump to the conclusion of this video, David Grann, Author of the Year, having only read one book, he's a fantastic author, a fantastic nonfiction author. And I'm sure he got that in part of this book being well received, but also in the backs of Killers of the Flower Moon, which is a huge movie that came out last year. A lot of big names attached to it, big directors, big actors, big people all around, all right? Big Hollywood people looking down on us little people, right? So I'm sure that contributed to his Author of the Year win. But it makes me wonder how great that book was to inspire Scorsese and inspire DiCaprio and all those actors that were in that movie to put their creative talents together to make a blockbuster film, which I have not seen, by the way. But that being said, going back to David Grann, very, very engaging read. I think it is a fascinating time of world history here. It focuses mostly on England and obviously the naval aspect of this, and then specifically the War of Jenkins' Ear, that time period, which is not a time period I'm super familiar with. But David Grann has a way of writing where very easy to understand. He introduces you to things that you need to be introduced to really understand like the wider picture here. He knows when to zoom out big picture. He knows when to keep it intimate with these characters. And he picked a very interesting group of characters. Obviously, with historical nonfiction, the main characters that emerge are often the ones that we know the most about, just because we know more about their inner workings and stuff like that. But the fact that he's not only stumbled upon this story, but was able to really commit himself, and it's just amazing. I love nonfiction because the sources on this book is like almost a fourth of these pages, just his sources. Just the amount of work that's got to be put into this just to find the factual information. It's incredible, and I have a lot of respect for nonfiction authors. And then on top of that, to condense all that information into a great, satisfying story, it's got to be one of the hardest things to do. Never written a book personally, fiction or nonfiction, but I got to say nonfiction seems a lot harder to get right, maybe at least to get right. But very, very well done. How he paints these pictures of these characters, he takes their historical writings, historical perspectives, and really makes very clear, I want to say archetypes, but that makes it feel like more cookie cutter than I wanted to say, but we have a very good idea of who these people are and who these people would be if we were there in the moment, how they act, what their personality types are, because these are all flawed people. And the great thing, the most interesting thing about this book is obviously it's a tale of shipwreck, mutiny, and murder, right? And the story starts out with a bang. These shipwreck survivors come to shore, and all of a sudden, many months later, another group arrives as well and says that stuff went down on this island, man. And who's right and who's wrong, who deserves to be punished? That's kind of like the thematic question. And then we go through the events as they unfurl. And the great part is that he leaves it kind of up to us to decide who was right and who was wrong. It's a historical gray area, and he presents it in a way where he just gives us the fact. He's not telling us how to think, but he presents this gripping story for us. So overall, it was, dare I say, a fantastic nonfiction book. Very well written. Is it like my favorite book of all time? Not necessarily. Is it my nonfiction book of all time? Not necessarily, but that's not a discredit to David Grann's writing style. I thought it was very approachable, very easy to read, and it was a very interesting story in history. That being said, how it ends up in the real world, it kind of just lacks that juicy drama that I was hoping for. Because it's the real world, right? And that is the downside of nonfiction, is that you got to stick to what actually happened, brother. But that being said, he presented it well, and towards the end, he kind of does take a perspective on the events, more broad macro stuff about like the English Empire at the time, and how they went about their conquests that day. So it kind of becomes a statement on British imperialism, which I thought was not the angle that he was approaching the whole story with the whole time, or maybe I just wasn't picking up on it earlier, but he kind of takes that turn towards the final conclusion. I kind of wish that was weaved in more, because what's happening, and without just telling you everything that happens in this book, we follow obviously the shipwreck of the Wager and all that stuff, and then we also explore a side story of this Anson character, who's a high up in military rank, and he's leading this expedition in this war against Spain and the combat between these two empires, and towards the end, we kind of veer away from the Wager and then focus on what Anson was doing in this time period. I almost wish that they were interwoven, and that way we could kind of keep that commentary on British imperialism throughout as a common thread. I do think it's a good point that he makes. I don't think he was like shoehorned in or anything like that. I just think that leaving all that stuff for the end and leaving all of Anson's stuff, it kind of just feels like a strange epilogue it's not really connected with the characters we've spent a lot of time with, or the drama that we've spent a lot of time with, and something like another great nonfiction author that I read a lot of his books, Eric Larson's books. He's like, his go-to is the interweaving stories, right? And they combine at the end. You can't necessarily do that with this because it's all tied around one historical event and all these characters knew each other, or at least knew of each other. But I think we could have used a little bit more of that, of like the macro side interwoven with the shipwreck tale of mutiny and murder side, rather than just focusing on one, and when that ends, hard stop, give us a look at what was happening outside of that. Again, very, very nitpicky complaint, very short book overall, less than 300 pages, very easy to read, and David Grann did a fantastic job, and dare I say, as with great nonfiction writers, when I encounter them, I simply must read all of their books. So I don't think he has a ton of other books, that is. It says best-selling author of Killers of the Flower Moon and The Lost City of Z. That sounds like just 2 more books. I could read 2 more books by David Grann. And so congrats to him for winning this award many, many months ago. I'm sure everyone that's has congratulated him so long ago that he's forgotten he's won. But you know what? Happy for the man. It was a great book, very enjoyable read. And if you're a fan of nonfiction, you're a fan of the sea. Pirates of the Caribbean type vibes, minus the pirates. This is a great book for you, and I encourage you to check it out. And even if you just want to get into nonfiction, which is something I always encourage, because not a lot of people read nonfiction, historical nonfiction is an easy gateway into that, guys. And a great story or great storytelling by a nonfiction writer is an even better way to get into nonfiction. So if you're looking for an entryway, this is a perfect one. Very, very easy to read, very entertaining, and very interesting. Makes you want to delve deep into the history of this time period. Makes you want to immerse yourself in the culture. Makes you want to build a time machine from scratch so you can go back and ride the ships, right? Catch scurvy and die. Because that's what happened a lot back in the day. And you'll learn a little bit about that if you read the book yourself. But overall, I enjoyed it, if you couldn't tell. But be sure to like and subscribe if you like the video and you want to see more like it in the future. Do you like nonfiction books? I sure do. I don't read enough of them, though, because you know what? Sometimes you just want a good blast of magic at a dragon, and other times you want to know, was magic real back in the day? The answer is always no. Even though they'd like you to think at certain periods of history that there was magic, it turns out when you dive deep, magic's not real. At least Not the kind they tell you about, anyway. Thanks for sticking around.